Hello again. This is Satan's Trilogy, and I am reading Book 3, Chapter 2. This will be reading 78. I am the author and the narrator. Sit back, relax, and let the story unfold. The twins left for a shower, but returned within minutes, without having dressed or putting their makeup on. They came out with their bathrobes on, and for the first time that Esther could remember, they both had the same color on, a bright canary yellow, terry cloth robes. They were full length, and they both looked superbly comfortable in them. Both had a white towel wrapped around her hair. They poured their own cup of coffee and joined Aunt Brandy at the table. Aunt Brandy looked at them in disbelief and said, "Wow, you girls take a really quick shower." Danielle said to Aunt Brandy, "We look forward to breakfast with you and Esther. It feels so wonderful here. This is what family and a home is all about." Brandy smiled as she took another sip of her Jamaican coffee. Everything means so much more when you have someone to share it with. Now that Esther is in my life, I have the same feelings that you just expressed. This is so wonderful. Tracy spoke up. "This really is nice. But our life has always been on the road with professional wrestling. It is all we know, and we enjoy it too." Esther spoke up. "Having a job you enjoy is the secret to happiness." Esther then added, "If the two of you ever feel differently, you need to remember that you have family right here. When you are in town for a show, this is where you should stay." Brandy quickly agreed. "That is right. You have a home here whenever you need it." The oven timer went off. "That is breakfast," said Esther. "We will let it cool for 6 minutes and then we can enjoy." Esther went to the oven, turned off the timer, and pulled a large ceramic dish out that smelled wonderful. Esther looked at it closely and smiled. "This is a Russian egg, pork, and pepper casserole. I think you will all love it. I have made a dozen slices of buttered toast to go with it." The two work wonderfully together. Esther quickly placed a skillet of diced potatoes on the stove. They were ready to go and would cook as the casserole cooled down. Esther moved the skillet about, tossed the diced potatoes about in the skillet as they cooked. Finally, placing a lid on the skillet, Esther said, 4 minutes and we eat." Within a few minutes, the table was holding the breakfast items, and everyone was enjoying the food. The potatoes were laced with bits of onion and red pepper, cooked perfectly. They looked as good as they tasted. Esther took the last bite on her plate and looked about the table. Brandy had just finished, and the twins were close to being done. The casserole had been a success. Esther spoke up. "Tonight is our third and final class for the two of you. Because you are leaving us early tomorrow, I need you to practice the first 2 classes in the spare room tonight." Today. Esther took a look at the twins and felt they would be able to follow her request, then added, "The crowd will love the two of you when they see that you are in control. They will love seeing 2 attractive women holding their own on the wrestling mat. Esther paused and added, "Your skills should prevent either of you from getting hurt. You must put others in their place and never allow someone to control you." Esther smiled. "This is how you need to be in the ring, and you can do it." Brandy decided to interrupt. She said, "The two of you can do anything you want. You have just had the best instructions possible, so don't doubt yourselves. You have the skills." Esther quickly added, "Well, after tonight, you will have all the skills that you should need." Esther promptly stood up and took her plate to the sink and rinsed it off, although nothing was ever left on her plate. Esther had learned from childhood that food was precious and that it should never be wasted. After placing the dish into the dishwasher, Esther walked back to the table and gave Danielle and Tracy both a hug. Esther then spoke, "I want you both sharp tonight on everything you have learned. Please practice for 4 hours today. Take turns being the aggressor. As you become comfortable with the move, increase the speed. You must react quickly to an aggressor." Esther stopped giving advice and started to walk towards the bedroom. "All right, I have got to get ready for school." Smiling at Aunt Brandy and the twins, Esther took off for the bedroom to dress for school. "I guess that means I should get going too," said Brandy. She then added, "I love my job, but in case you haven't noticed, I am not a morning person." Brandy left the room to begin her morning ritual of showering, dressing, and grooming. The twins remained sitting at the table, sipping the Jamaican coffee. Within minutes, Esther returned, wearing some tight jeans and her yellow Angora sweater. She had a buckle on her belt that had a large turquoise stone. Esther was wearing, for the first time ever, girls' country boots. They were dark blue and had embossed buffalo on the sides. This might have looked foolish on anyone else, but on Esther, the boots fit her other garments and she looked hot, as usual. The doorbell rang, and Esther quickly ran to the monitor at the door's side. She recognized the people outside and quickly opened the door. Speaking in Chinese, Esther welcomed them, thanking them for arriving on time. 6 Chinese men were all business. They spoke to Esther and asked where she wanted the padding. Esther, speaking to them in Chinese, asked they follow her. She led the 6 men to the center room, where they laid down a 3-inch padding that was joined together midway down the room with a dovetail joint that held the 2 sections tightly together. The color of the padding was a light cream, similar to the W.O.W. wrestling ring surface. Esther was extremely excited and pleased after they had installed the padding. Speaking in Chinese, she spoke to what appeared to be the manager on the job and thanked the man for arriving on time and for installing the padding so quickly. Esther offered him a $100 bill for his services, but he shook his head no, thanked her as he left the apartment. Danielle and Tracy had followed the movement of everyone and had already concluded that Esther had arranged for a cushioned practice mat to be installed in the spare bedroom. Tracy spoke first. "Esther, that mat is wonderful. It's doubtful that we'll be hurt when falling onto a 3-inch foam mat." Esther smiled at Tracy and responded, "The mat is just temporary. It is for the both of you. I believe that this mat will be similar to the surface of the wrestling mat. You girls are like big sisters to me. said Esther as she gazed at them proudly. "You need to practice today, and this is a very close to how it will be on the professional wrestling ring." Esther smiled at the twins. "This will make the practicing easier. I will see the both of you at the warehouse after school." Esther had opened the closet door, grabbing her helmet, backpack, and a never-before-seen country-styled leather jacket. It was dark blue with a large buffalo embossed on the back. The buffalo had its head low and was charging towards the viewer. Reaching for the front door, Esther smiled. "I'll see you at the warehouse after school." It took a few minutes before Esther arrived at Grant High School parking lot and was met by John and his crew. "Esther," said John, "good morning to you. I see you have a new look going on. It's country, isn't it?" John waited for a response as Esther smiled. "I watched a show a few nights ago and saw a country artist do a wonderful song." Esther smiled. "I just wanted to show a little appreciation to the country folk." Esther grinned as she gave John a welcoming hug. "Well," said John, "country looks good on you. Congratulations, because you might be the only girl in this school that could do a country look and fit in." Esther was really pleased that John liked the country look and that he thought she had done it well. "I like clothes to a certain extent," said Esther, "but I love the country boots and the turquoise jewelry. This is true Western America." Esther smiled. "Besides, the young lady that I saw was just wonderful, and she represented the Southwest country just fine." John was amused. "Esther, who is it that inspired you so much?" "I have a direct feed from the Grand Ole Opry, and the young singer's name is Stella Irene." Esther was a bit excited at discussing the singer. "She is only 18 and is very talented. She seems very sweet too," said Esther. Esther and John reached the school's front entrance and continued to talk for a moment until they were motioned through the entrance. People working security at the front door quickly scanned them and their backpacks and motioned them on through. Esther watched the security people as they handed the backpack to John, and she joined him walking into the foyer. Looking at John, Esther said, "You need to be at the warehouse after school for the third night of instructions." Esther smiled at John. "This is the final night for the twins, and I know that you'll want to finish them well." Esther quickly gave John a hug and took off after saying to Mike and Wes that they needed to show up too. Wednesdays were usually boring at school. Everyone wanted to get the day over with so that the weekend would be closer. Well, this was still true. The overall attitude of the student body had changed, and everyone was now focused on their education and the future. The feeling of helplessness was gone. Each and every student had a guaranteed scholarship for their future path. It had been clearly explained to the students they could now choose any form of higher education, and if they worked to get there, it would truly happen. Drug use within the school had dropped to zero. Gang intimidations against each other had dropped to zero, and absenteeism had moved from 33% to zero. And, just as important, parents were showing up at the school for all of the events. Parents were wanting to see what had changed their children, and they were asking questions in a positive way. It would be a strange day in that Esther had a test in every class, and it seemed that all of the students were surprisingly ready. Esther's creative writing class, Mr. Little, had assigned a 2-page response to the statement, "All strippers are future hookers." The assignment was to respond to this statement, and surprisingly, no one complained, and each student took the paper and went directly to work. The student body now had a promise and a hope, and with that, each person was working for a better future. By the time Esther arrived at calculus class, six announcements had been made over the intercom system of various seniors having been accepted at state universities. Mr. Mason had decided to reinforce the success of the student body by making everyone aware of positive opportunities accomplished by seniors. Mr. Grade welcomed everyone into the class. His monitoring of the hallway was more of a formality. Since the scholarship announcement, the student body seemed more united and lost their aggressions against each other. As Raven, Esther, and Day took their seats, Mr. Grade began to speak. This has been an exceptional class, and I am certain I will never experience another like this class. Mr. Grade stepped back slightly from the class. I had to keep challenging this class, and while the young men held their own, the young women excelled every time. Mr. Grade stepped slightly towards the class and smiled at everyone. As he took a look at each individual, "You have all matched my personal level of knowledge. So obviously I have nothing left to teach you on a personal level." Mr. Grade paused and went back to his desk for a drink of water. Everyone in here has earned a grade of A many times over. I have also placed a personal letter of recommendation in all of your transcripts. If any of you were to choose to continue in mathematics after graduating, I would be thrilled. I believe that each and every one of you could go far with a career in mathematics. Mr. Grade removed his slightly worn suit jacket and continued to speak as he did so. I have discovered that our school has surprisingly found some notoriety, and that scholars are now interested in coming here to lecture students that are willing to listen. We have 10 days left for this year. I have found 10 exciting lecturers willing to come here and speak to the class on their achievements in mathematics, what they hope to achieve, and what the possibilities are for all of you. At that moment, a young man in his early 20s stood at the door, knocking slightly to make his appearance known. Mr. Grade looked over and became excited. "Class, our first guest lecturer is here. Please welcome Dr. Anthony Good." The class had challenged everyone. Mr. Grade had rewritten the exams to higher levels previously thought possible, and now he was taking the class to a level of excitement that none of them had thought possible. Not only was Mr. Good an excellent speaker, but he was very candid about the rewards of his chosen profession. Actuary for the largest insurance company in the United States. Some of the young male students in the class seemed very interested in what Mr. Good had to say. It was unfortunate that the class wasn't longer, but the bell rang and students had to shift classes. The entire class had approached Dr. Good and thanked him individually for coming to Grant High. Esther, Raven, and Day quickly said goodbye to Chris and then continued to leave. When 6th hour arrived, Ms. Strong was waiting for the girls to fill the bleachers. Once she recognized that everyone was present, she addressed the class. The school year is winding down, and for the first time ever, I am giving the entire class a well-deserved grade of A. Miss Strong didn't pause to look for a response, but continued to speak. I think that all of you know that you deserve it. You earned it. I am proud to put my name behind it. She smiled and said, Congratulations to all of you. She then applauded the entire class for a lengthy amount of time as she purposely looked at each young girl sitting before her. We are going to run today, but with only 3 days before the state competition, we need to plan strategy. Our Gothic girls have led our practices for the semester, and I hope they agree with me that this be our last hard run. Miss Strong stopped speaking and looked to Esther and her friends. The entire class turned towards Day, Raven, Eve, Helen, and Chris. In turn, they looked to Esther. The 5 girls leaned into Esther, then came up. Raven spoke out with their view. We think that today should be our last hard run, resting 2 days, and on Saturday we all claimed the state title. The class erupted in cheers, and Miss Strong yelled out, Well then, let's give today our best, starting now. Run our race, go, go, go. Miss Strong yelled at the girls as the girls ran out, running a cross-country path that was available to the class from the school. Miss Strong started her stopwatch as the girls ran out. Watching from the higher elevation of the gymnasium, she started a second timer as the first girls reached the beginning of the course. Eve, Helen, Chris, Raven, and Day always found themselves at the back of the runners with Esther running alongside, encouraging them and setting a faster pace. 36 minutes later, the girls emerged from the trail in record-breaking time. Miss Strong was excited. She looked at her stopwatch and realized the class was once again ahead of their best time. Today, for the first time, the Gothic girls had a companion running alongside. It was Esther's friend, Amy. She was holding her own and even gaining on them. The final stretch was to the end of the track, and Miss Strong had realized she had to be there to make it official. She ran down the sloped hill to the track and was ready to proclaim a winner. Day, Raven, Chris, Helen, and Eve were out front with Esther on their heels. Amy was coming up behind them and narrowing the gap. Surprisingly, the rest of the class was within 60 yards of the girls. Everyone saw that Amy was making a bid for first place. Esther yelled at her 5 friends, "Run the finish hard, Amy is coming." At that moment, Esther fell slightly behind and watched as Amy passed her with a strong expression of determination on her face. Pulling closer to the 5 Gothic girls, Amy closed the gap and passed Eve, then Chris, and with 20 yards to go, Amy passed Day. And as they reached the end of the track, Helen was only slightly ahead of Amy. Raven was ahead by only a couple of yards. The entire class arrived within seconds of the first to finish, and they all grabbed Amy and held her up on their shoulders. It was truly exciting for everyone. Amy was the first girl for the entire semester to pass any of the Gothic girls on a run. The entire class was excited. Esther was excited too. She grabbed Eve and Day and pulled them to Amy to congratulate her. Miss Strong loudly proclaimed, "Amy, you're running like a true racer, and with the desire to win. Saturday, I see everyone here surprising themselves. Our class, along with our school, will go down in history with honors." The entire class had listened to Miss Strong and carried Amy off to the locker room. I'm going to stop there. That was reading 78. Hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, be safe and take care.